The night my brother used my name to take out a $40,000 loan. I was 3 states away closing the biggest account of my career. I remember the exact moment I found out, not because of a phone call, not because someone warned me, but because a stranger in a bank branch in Cincinnati looked at me across a desk and said, very quietly, "Miss Carter, this is the 4th time you've applied for credit with us this year." I had never walked into that bank before in my life. I want you to sit with that for a second. Someone had been walking around using my name, my social security number, my credit history, and I had no idea. And that someone wasn't a stranger. That someone grew up in the same house as me, ate at the same table, called our mother Mom. That someone was my brother, Derek. But before I tell you what happened 2 months later, and trust me, you are going to want to hear what happened 2 months later, I need to take you back to the beginning. Because the money was bad enough. What came before the money was worse. I am 31 years old. I work in corporate sales for a logistics company based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I travel constantly. I close deals. I have built my professional reputation from nothing, and I am proud of that. Our family grew up in Dayton, Ohio. Not wealthy, not poor, just the kind of steady working class that means you learn the value of a dollar before you learn long division. My mother, Patrice, worked nights at a distribution center for 22 years. My father passed when I was 16. After he was gone, it was the 3 of us, my mother, Derek, and me. Derek is 4 years older than me. Growing up, I looked up to him. He was charming in that effortless way that made every room feel like it belonged to him. Teachers loved him. Our aunts and uncles called him the one who's going places. He had this quality where he could make you feel like the most important person in the room, right up until you weren't useful anymore, and then you wouldn't hear from him for months. I didn't see that pattern clearly until I was an adult. When you grow up inside something, you don't always have the angle to see its shape. After our father died, I watched Derek step into a version of himself that I think he had been waiting to perform. He became the man of the house in title, in posture, in the way he sat at the head of the dinner table. But the actual work of the house, the bills, the groceries, the driving our mother to her shift when her car needed repairs, that was me. I was 17, then 18, then 19, and I was the one making sure the electricity stayed on. I don't say this for sympathy. I say it because it is relevant to everything that comes later. When I was 22, I got a job offer in Charlotte. It was a junior sales role, nothing glamorous, but it was a foot in the door, and it was out. I told my mother and Derek at dinner. My mother cried a little. The good kind of crying, the kind that means she was proud. Derek smiled and raised his glass of sweet tea, and said, "That's my little sister." And I believed, in that moment, that he meant it. I moved to Charlotte. I worked. I climbed. I sent money home when my mother needed it. 300 here, 500 there, a new water heater, other neater, a car repair, a medical bill that insurance didn't cover. I never made a production of it. I just did it because she was my mother. Derek, in those same years, moved through a series of jobs the way some people move through hobbies. Construction for a while, then a car dealership, then some kind of property management thing that he was always vague about. He lived at home until he was 32. My mother never charged him rent. I had opinions about this that I mostly kept to myself. Here's where the money comes in. 2 years ago, Derek called me. He had an opportunity, a real estate investment, a property in Dayton that was going to be flipped and sold, and he just needed a cosigner to get things moving. He said he had investors, he had a contractor. He just needed one signature from someone with good credit because his own credit had a few things on it right now. I said no. I was polite about it, but I said no clearly. I told him I didn't co-sign loans, not for anyone, because I had worked too hard to protect my financial standing to put it at risk. He said he understood. He said he respected it. He said, "You're right, I get it." I should have known that was too easy. What I did not know, what I would not know for almost 18 months, was that Derek did not find another cosigner. He did not find another path. He found my documents. During a trip home for Thanksgiving the previous year, I had left a folder in my childhood bedroom tax returns, a copy of my social security card, my passport. I had been doing some financial paperwork and hadn't packed everything back up before I left. I didn't notice the folder was gone because I didn't need those specific documents again right away, and by the time I would have looked for them, they were already somewhere else entirely. Derek had taken them. He had used my information to apply for a personal loan, then a second one, then a line of credit at a home improvement store, then that bank account in Cincinnati. 4 separate institutions. $40,000, spread out over 14 months, in my name. I did not find out from Derek. I did not find out from my mother. I found out because a loan officer in a city I was visiting for a work conference looked at her screen and gently told me that my credit history showed a pattern she needed to ask me about. I sat in that chair and felt the entire floor drop out from under me. I drove back to my hotel. I pulled my credit report on my phone. I sat on the edge of the bed in my work clothes and read through account after account that I had never opened, charge after charge that I had never made, and I recognized the address connected to most of them. It was my mother's house. It was the house I grew up in. I want to tell you that I called Derek immediately and confronted him. I didn't. I know that might be hard to understand, but when you realize someone you love has done something like this, there is a period, maybe hours, maybe days where your brain genuinely cannot make the information fit. It's like trying to push 2 magnets together at the wrong ends. The facts are there, but your understanding keeps sliding away from them. I called my best friend, Nadia, instead. Nadia is a paralegal in Charlotte, and she has the exact right combination of warmth and cold practicality that I needed in that moment. She stayed on the phone with me for 2 hours. She told me what to do, and in what order. She helped me think instead of just feel. The first thing I did was document everything. I downloaded every page of my credit report. I wrote a timeline. I noted every institution, every date, every amount. I did not contact Derek. I did not contact my mother. Not yet. The second thing I did was contact a consumer protection attorney, a woman named Rachel, who I found through Nadia's firm. Rachel confirmed what I already knew, but could not quite accept what Derek had done was identity fraud. It was a federal crime. She walked me through my options and told me the one thing I needed to hear clearly. You are the victim here. You are not responsible for any of this debt. The third thing I did was request fraud affidavits from every institution. This process took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of phone calls, certified letters, notarized forms, conversations with fraud departments. I did all of it quietly, from my apartment in Charlotte, while my brother went about his life in Dayton without any idea that I knew. And then I went home. I did not tell my mother I was coming. I did not tell Derek. I booked a flight for a Saturday morning, and I drove from the Dayton airport straight to the house with a folder in my passenger seat that was thick enough to use as a doorstop. My mother opened the door in her bathrobe, surprised, happy to see me. She hugged me and asked if I was hungry, and I told her I needed to sit down with her and Derek together. She heard something in my voice, and her face changed. Just slightly, that mother sensor that picks up on frequencies nobody else can detect. Derek was in the living room watching college football. He looked up when I walked in and smiled that easy, automatic smile. "Hey, there she is," he said. I sat down. I put the folder on the coffee table. I want to describe what happened next carefully, because I have replayed it many times in my head. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I had done all of that privately, in my hotel room in Cincinnati, in my car in the airport parking garage, in my bathroom at 2 in the morning. By the time I sat down in that living room, I was completely calm, not the fake calm of someone pretending, but the real calm of someone who has already moved through the worst of it and come out the other side with a folder full of documented proof. I laid the papers out one by one on the coffee table like I was dealing cards. Credit report, loan application with my forged signature. Second loan application, line of credit, bank records. A letter from Rachel outlining every charge, every date, and what each one corresponded to. I said, "I need you to explain these to me, Derek." He looked at the papers. His expression did something complicated. The easy smile didn't disappear all at once. It flickered, recalculated, tried to find a new shape. "Where did you get those?" he said. "I pulled my credit report," I said. "A bank flagged my account when I tried to open one in Cincinnati." I've been working with an attorney for the past 3 weeks. The smile was gone now. My mother had picked up one of the pages. She was holding it with both hands, reading it slowly, and I watched the color leave her face. Derek said, "It's not what it looks like." I have thought about that sentence many times since. It's not what it looks like. There is an entire philosophy of avoidance packed into 6 words, as if the question were one of optics rather than fact. As if the papers on the table were a visual illusion rather than a federal crime. I said, "Then tell me what it is." What followed was approximately 40 minutes that I would describe as the most uncomfortable conversation I have ever been in. Derek tried 3 separate explanations. The first was that he had intended to pay everything back before I found out. The second was that he had been meaning to tell me, and just hadn't found the right moment. The third, which came after my mother started crying, was that he was in trouble, real trouble, financial trouble, debt he couldn't climb out of, and he hadn't known what else to do. I listened to all of it. I let him finish. And then I said the thing I had rehearsed in my car on the way from the airport. "I understand that you were in trouble," I said. "I want to believe that. But you didn't come to me. You didn't ask me for help. You took my information out of my room without my knowledge, and you used my name, my credit, my identity, 14 times over 14 months. You did not make one mistake. You made a deliberate decision, over and over again, for more than a year. And now I have a credit report that looks like a crime scene, because it is one." My mother asked me what I was going to do. This was the moment I had thought about the most. Because here is the thing nobody tells you about being wronged by family. The real decision isn't what to do about the person who hurt you. It's whether you let the love you have for that person override the responsibility you have to yourself. I looked at my mother and I said, "I've already filed fraud affidavits with all 4 institutions. The debt is being disputed and will be removed from my credit. That process is in motion regardless of anything Derek does now." Derek said, "Are you going to press charges?" I said, "That depends on you." What I wanted, what Rachel and I had discussed, was voluntary restitution and full cooperation with every financial institution's fraud investigation. Derek would need to write and sign a formal statement, acknowledging that he had used my information without consent. He would need to make a repayment plan. He would need to do it quickly, and he would need to do it in writing. If he didn't, Rachel had made it very clear that the case was strong enough to go further. Derek sat with that for a long moment, and then he said, "Okay." My mother cried through most of it. I held her hand. I want to be clear about something. I do not blame my mother for what Derek did. She didn't know. And when she found out, she did not make excuses for him. She looked at her son and said, "You are going to fix this. Every single piece of it." That meant more to me than I have words for. The weeks that followed were not neat or simple. Getting Derek to follow through on a voluntary basis required 3 more conversations, 2 emails from Rachel, and 1 very direct phone call in which I said, plainly, that my patience had a specific and near-approaching end date. He cooperated. Slowly, reluctantly, with the energy of someone who would have preferred literally any other outcome, but he cooperated. The affidavits were accepted. The fraudulent accounts were closed and removed from my credit report. The repayment plan was put into writing, signed, and witnessed. Rachel filed the documentation. It was over legally, financially, officially over in about 7 weeks. Here is what I want to tell you about the 2 months after I sat in that bank in Cincinnati and felt the floor disappear. My phone did not stop ringing. Not because of 56 missed calls from my family panicking, though. Derek did call me approximately that many times between our first conversation and the day he signed the paperwork, each call a variation of apologizing, explaining, asking me to confirm I wasn't going to press charges, asking again, calling back because he wasn't sure I meant it. It rang because Rachel called with updates, because Nadia called to check on me, because the fraud departments called to confirm my identity, because my mother called, sometimes just to hear my voice, sometimes to ask a practical question about the process, sometimes to say, "I raised him better than this. I need you to know I know that." Those calls I answered every time. The last call I want to tell you about came on a Tuesday morning, about 9 weeks after Cincinnati. It was a number I didn't recognize, a 937 area code, Dayton. I almost didn't pick up. I did. It was a woman who worked at the home improvement store where Derek had opened a credit line in my name. She had been following the fraud dispute and wanted to confirm that the final account closure had been processed and that my credit would reflect the correction within 30 days. She said, "I'm so sorry this happened to you, Miss Carter. I hope you know none of this was your fault." I thanked her. I hung up. I sat in my car in the parking garage of my office building for about 5 minutes and did something I had not done through any of the harder moments of the previous 2 months. I cried. Not from pain, or not only from pain. From relief. From the specific exhaustion of carrying something heavy for a long time and finally being allowed to set it down. Here is the part I think about when people ask me if I regret not pressing charges. Derek is my brother. I love him. Those are not things I chose, and they are not things that changed, even when I wanted them to. What changed is what I know about him now, and what I will and won't carry into the future. He is not someone I trust with access to my home, my documents, or my finances. He is not someone I will co-sign anything for, not now, not ever. He is not someone I can be close to the way I was before, because the version of him I was close to the easy grin, the raised glass of sweet tea, "that's my little sister" was built on a foundation that had a very large crack in it that I just couldn't see. But he is still my brother. And my mother still needs me not to blow her family apart entirely. So I made a choice that was right for me, in my specific situation, with my specific circumstances, and I am not saying it's the choice anyone else should make. What I am saying is this. Know your credit report. Know what's in it. Check it. You are allowed to know. You are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to say no when someone asks you to put your financial safety on the line, even if that someone calls you by a name they've known since before you could walk. The floor dropped out from under me in a bank in Cincinnati, and I built a new one. What time is it where you are right now? And wherever you're watching from, I'm glad you're here.